So when most people think about a vegan meal, they think of a boring plate of vegetables, salad, or smoothie, something very boring. But today I'm going to show you an easy way to eat more vegan meals without spending a lot more time in the kitchen. A lot of people don't know where to start, but once you understand the 4 steps that I'm about to share, you'll realize that it's a lot easier to eat more vegan meals than you thought. So the first step is to know what vegan means. This word carries a lot of stigma, and people have a lot of misconceptions about what it actually means, so we're going to talk about those. So vegan, when it comes to food, because there's also veganism around clothing and beauty products and things like that. But when it comes to food, it's any food or meal that does not contain animal products. Vegan does not mean that the food is healthy, unprocessed, sugar-free, gluten-free, clean, natural, organic, or low-calorie. It just means that it doesn't contain animal products. That is it. So, what are animal products? Because nobody uses that term, but that's what the definition is. So obviously meat, like you see here, those are pretty obvious. Most people realize that those are animal products. But the animal products that may not immediately jump to mind are those that are made with not the flesh of these animals, but the secretions or other parts of them. So they include cheese, cream cheese, sour cream, whipped cream, yogurt, ice cream, and butter, because they are made with milk, which comes from cows. They include mayonnaise, which is made with eggs, which comes from chickens. It includes chicken and beef broth, which is made from the meat and bones of chickens and cows. Animal products also include gelatin, which is made by boiling animal skin, tendons, cartilage, ligaments, and or the bones of cows, pigs, or fish in water. Yeah, it's kind of disgusting, but anyway. And finally, it includes honey, which bees make as food for themselves. And this one is, I don't know if I'd say controversial, but people are kind of mixed, a lot of vegans, on whether or not to eat honey, but the bees actually make it for themselves. It's not for us, it's their food. So anyway, so that's step 1, knowing what vegan means and what animal products are. So once you know what vegan means, the second step is to know your options. You may be thinking about all the food that I just listed and wonder what in the world is left. There's a lot is left. So innovation in the food space has really made strides. We're very, very fortunate. Those of us who have chosen not to eat animal products are extremely thankful for all the scientists who are making our dreams possible. So in addition to the wide variety of vegetables and fruit, beans, whole grains and seeds, and nuts, we have plant-based alternatives to all of the products that I listed earlier. All of them. So let's start with meat. There's plant-based bacon, beef, ground beef, burgers, deli slices, chicken, hot dogs, pork, meatballs, loaves and roasts, sausage, turkey, and fish. And you can also buy plant-based condiments, all those things that are made with things that come from animals. So we have lots of cheese, more cheese, cream cheese, honey, margarine, mayonnaise, sour cream, whipped cream. And you can also buy plant-based ice cream and frozen desserts. We're getting more flavors every year. This is not even like all of them, but it's just some of them. Milk, you can get plant-based milk, creamers, yogurt, and you can even buy plant-based egg substitutes for baking. And unfortunately, these tend to work best when you're only substituting 1 or 2 eggs. Substituting 3 or more gets a little tricky, but some people have figured out some workarounds. But we do have these egg substitutes for baking. And then we also have some egg substitutes that you can actually scramble. I have used the vegan egg, and it does scramble. It doesn't taste exactly like an egg, but it kind of, reminds you of that. I've seen some videos for Hampton Creek's Just Scramble, and it looks kind of amazing. Supposedly, it should be coming to market within the next year or so. So be on the lookout for that. This has been in the works for a long time. I remember them talking about this for a while. So this is exciting. And there are many frozen dinners that don't have any animal products. So we can, everything that has animal products, we have a replacement for the most part. I have a lot of the specific brands listed on my website. If you click on the Ultimate Guide to Vegan Substitutes, you can see that long list, and it's really not even, I think I have over 150, but there are more. I can't keep up. I really can't. I try to make some notes when I go to the grocery store and see something new, but I can't keep up. I have included a few of my favorite vegan brands in your workbook. So it's really a good time to eat more vegan food. We have so many options. I can't imagine what it was like in the 70s before all this innovation, like before the internet. That's crazy. I heard it wasn't so good. All they had was tofu. But anyway, so before I move on to a few other plant-based meat substitutes, I really want to just mention that these products are more expensive than the products made with animal products for the most part. Yes, these are more expensive than products made with animals. So keep that in mind. And there are several reasons for this, and obviously one is government subsidies. But I personally think that in about 10 years, they will be priced more competitively, and hopefully within 20 years, many of the animal products won't even be on the shelves. That's my dream anyway. And I see signs that the animal agriculture industry and food manufacturers are at least noticing these trends and making investments that show that they're diversifying and want to make sure they're kind of doing the right thing and making the biggest profit. The animal agriculture industry it's not efficient. So anyway, so my tip is not to avoid these products, especially the condiments, because they're not quite as expensive, but to stretch them by using less of them than you normally would if they were cheaper. Particularly some of the plant-based meats. Think of them more as like flavor and texture enhancers instead of like the main dish. Focus your meal around whole plant foods and sprinkle in the plant-based alternatives to stretch your dollars and the food. A word on taste and texture. They are not going to taste the same. They're not going to taste exactly like the animal products. But some of them are going to be pretty close. I mean, I think a lot of Gardine's fishless fillets are amazing. I'm not sure how they did it. I don't really care. They taste really good. And the chicken and stuff, like, you probably wouldn't notice a difference. If somebody made a dish for you with some of these substitutes, you would not know that it's not meat. So just something to keep in mind to adjust your expectations or manage them. And then another note, I see this a lot in Facebook groups. So many people kind of come to wanting to eat a more plant-based diet because of health reasons and to avoid processed foods. My particular take on this is if you are at the early stages and just trying to figure out what a meal looks like without meat, you don't necessarily need to make it harder by trying to eat like a super clean diet at the same time. Using plant-based meats as you transition can be extremely helpful, especially if you are preparing food for someone other than yourself, like a spouse and children. Having something familiar on the plate is going to make it so much easier. As it gets easier for you and your family, if you decide you want to definitely move closer to a whole food plant-based diet, do that. But don't try to be perfect right out of the gate. As long as plants cover most of your plate, you should really be fine. And I think that my personal opinion is that you're still going to be better off than if you were eating a lot of meat. My personal opinion. So I wouldn't say avoid processed foods, especially in the early stages. Use them as you need to make the transition. And they're really good. They're really good. Okay. So you actually have even more options when it comes to substituting meat in your meals. Tofu, tempeh, seitan, and TVP. These tend to be more reasonably priced than plant-based meats. You just have to know how to prepare them. And I'm going to have some tips and a few recipes for each of these in the course in the next few weeks. So tofu is a curd made from soybeans. It comes in different degrees of firmness. You have silken and soft tofu. That's good for smoothies and even some baked goods. It's actually a cake recipe that I've made that uses silken tofu. And you have firm and extra firm tofu. That's good for main dishes. You can actually cook it so that it kind of resembles eggs. That's called tofu scramble. Tempeh is fermented soybeans, and I know that it really does not look like something you want to eat, but it's good when you cook it. And tempeh, like tofu, can be sliced into slabs, strips, cubes, or crumbled. Seitan is made with vital wheat gluten flour. So if you have celiac disease, you do not want to eat seitan. It has the meatiest texture of them all. Making your own takes some skill and knowledge, and there's a recipe that I have, and it came out pretty good. I'm just making some tweaks to the seasoning, but it's a little tricky. Several companies sell it, and Asian restaurants often use it as a meat replacement in their vegetarian dishes. I believe they've been making it for probably centuries, and they're really good at it. You would never even know. So if you're eating a vegetarian dish that's like pork, or it says like vegetarian pork or whatever, it's probably seitan. TVP is textured or texturized vegetable protein, also known as textured soy protein, TSP, soy meat, soya chunks, or soy curls. It comes in different forms like crumbles, chunks, and strips, and it's actually the easiest to prepare. All you have to do is really rehydrate it in boiling water and toss it in your recipe. I have a recipe I have a TVP sausage, and you season the water before you put the TVP in it, and it gives it the flavor of sausage. Because something to remember, and this is kind of a tangent, but something to remember is that meat on its own, like say you boiled some chicken, that's not really that good. It's not really that exciting. Nobody really wants to eat boiled chicken. So remember that the flavor really comes from, how you season it and prepare it. So you can do all those things to plant-based foods and still, satisfy those urges. So, if you're kind of craving meat or whatever, you're really probably just craving that texture and the flavor of, based on the way you prepare it. So just something to keep in mind. Okay, so remember that vegan doesn't mean the food has some kind of special ingredients or properties. It just means that it doesn't contain animal products. So keep that in mind. I've spent a lot of time talking about plant-based alternatives, but don't forget about all the dishes and meals that are already kind of naturally vegan because they just happen to be. And these are foods that you've probably eaten before and you may not have thought of as vegan, but they are because they don't contain any animal products. So these are all the foods that people probably eat all the time and don't think anything of them. They're actually vegan. So again, when people say vegan, they think, oh, it's something special or it's tofu or something, but really no, all these things are already vegan. So something to keep in mind. It's really a paradigm shift. It's really tricky, and I wrote about that in the journal if you get to that page. But, as long as it doesn't have animal products in it, it's vegan. And another tip is to try different vegetables, fruits, grains, beans, and fruit. I personally think, and it may just be me speaking from my mother, and my mother cooked a lot, but I still think that I had limited exposure to not only different cooking methods, but also different types of vegetables. I feel like I probably had the same 3, 4, maybe 5 different types of vegetables growing up. They were always cooked the same way. I know that the only grain that I ever ate was rice. I don't remember eating beans growing up. I did, I guess, black-eyed peas on New Year's. But other than that, baked beans at a cookout. That was probably the extent of the types of beans that I was exposed to growing up. Probably ate only a few fruits. And my point is really that most Americans have limited exposure to the really, really big world of vegetables, fruits, beans, grains, seeds. So kind of this is a great opportunity to explore and try new foods. You're going to be surprised at what you discover that you like. So keep an open mind. And each time you go to the grocery store, try a different fruit or vegetable. Summertime might be a better time to at least explore the fruit because you have seasonal stuff. But each time you go, try something different and try to eat the rainbow throughout the week. To review. So step 1 is to know what vegan means. We've covered that. I think you guys are clear on that. And step 2 is to know your options. Step 3 is to locate them in the store. Now, this is a vegan life hack. You might expect all the food items that we talked about to be in the same section of the store, in every store, but that's not true. You might think they're going to all be in the natural food section, but they're not. They're in different sections of the store, and each store puts things in different places. So I'm going to tell you some general areas where you can look, and then you're going to have to go to your stores and figure out where they put these things. That's your homework. Not every store has a huge variety, but most stores have the basics. They're going to have milk, probably yogurt. They all have tofu and tempeh, and probably a plant-based sausage. So here's an example. In the Kroger stores near me, the milk is in the natural food section along with the creamers, cheese, yogurt, tofu, seitan, mayonnaise, and sausage. Ice cream is in the frozen food section beside the dairy ice cream. Plant-based products made by Gardein and Beyond Meat are in the frozen food section near the waffles, I think. And frozen dinners are with the regular frozen dinners. They may be like at the end of the aisle. In Target, the plant-based frozen dinners are in the plant-based food section of the freezer section. So different stores, different locations. And I've also seen some plant-based salad dressings with the other salad dressings in the condiment aisle. In stores that don't have a natural food section, I've seen tofu and sausage in the produce section. Plant-based milk is usually beside the dairy milk. And ice cream is usually, again, in with the regular ice cream, dairy ice cream. So these are a couple of different places that you can look in the grocery store. So kind of just do some exploring and figure out where stuff is. That's going to be helpful. So check all these sections when you go to the store. You do not, I don't know why, well, I do know why people think this. I shouldn't say that. You don't have to shop at Whole Foods and Trader Joe's. You do not. You absolutely do not. I never go to the West End. Like, you don't have to do that. Go to Farm Fresh and Kroger. It's okay to go there for a few specialty items. A lot of times if something new comes out and I'm out that way, I will go to Whole Foods because they'll have everything. But you don't need everything. It's fun to, try new products, but you don't have to go there on your weekly shopping trip. Know that Kroger, Aldi, Food Lion, Farm Fresh, Target, and Walmart carry plant-based alternatives, all of them. You just have to know where to look. And again, each store has them in different locations. And all these places sell tofu and tempeh, all of them. And don't forget about vegetables. It's a big produce section in every grocery store. Fruit, whole grains, beans, nuts, and seeds. All the grocery stores have these. You do not have to go to a special place, spend extra money just for these items. So finally, and this is where your journal comes in. Finally, step 4 is where we pull all of this together. Step 4 is to replace or omit animal products in your meals. This is what we in the vegan community call veganizing a dish or a recipe. So it just means that you're taking a recipe or a meal that isn't vegan and making a few simple swaps to make it vegan. And this is why I want your journal filled out so that we have some jumping off points to do this. So we're going to walk through several examples. And what you're basically doing, again, is looking at a meal that you typically eat and identifying what would need to be replaced and what can be omitted to make it vegan. And this is really surprisingly easy to do. You do not need to start making special vegan meals that look nothing like what you normally cook, or searching for vegan recipes. A few simple swaps will typically do the trick. And again, you're going to start doing this when you meal plan in the next few weeks. So pay attention. This is how we're going to do it. It's going to be very easy. I promise. Probably shouldn't make those promises, but I do promise. I don't think it's not that hard. But it's a different way of thinking. So again, this is all about a paradigm shift. Kind of have to shift your mind and think about things a little bit differently. So here are the questions that you need to answer about a given meal. What animal products are in it? Which ones are essential and need to be replaced? What are your options for replacing them? And which ingredients are simply condiments and could be omitted? And I know it's controversial, but cheese is typically, unless you're making macaroni and cheese is a condiment. You can omit it. But if you want to buy plant-based cheese, feel free, do it. But it's just one less thing to do if you don't absolutely need it for the recipe. So we talked about these 7 ways to replace meat. But I'm going to talk about them again in the context of specific meals. So you can replace meat with vegetables, beans, again, tofu, tempeh, seitan, TVP, and plant-based meat. 7 ways. So let's look at some examples of these. So vegetables. Sometimes you can replace meat with vegetables. Portobello mushrooms can make a good stand-in on a burger. Chunky vegetables, particularly starchy vegetables like potatoes, can replace meat in stews. Smaller, bite-sized vegetables can be a great substitute for meat in a marinara sauce or on pasta. Beans, they're my favorite, and they have a very bad reputation. And it's really a shame because they're so good for you. I don't understand why people hate on beans. The health benefits are amazing. They're much better to for lowering your cholesterol than oatmeal. Anyway, and they're cheap. They're cheap. Like when everybody says, oh, being a vegan is expensive, I'm like, you cannot get any cheaper than beans. You absolutely cannot. But anyway, sidebar. Beans are a great substitute for meat and chili, and burgers, and salads, and in tacos. And if you have not had a falafel, you should have a falafel. They are basically chickpea patties, and they're perfect in wraps and in salads. I actually got one today for lunch from a restaurant down the street from work. And you can buy falafel mix, which just requires you to add water, or you can buy pre-made falafels. They're beans. Tofu, tempeh, and seitan are perfect substitutes for meat in pretty much any application. Main component of a meal, with pasta or rice, on a sandwich, on a salad. Easy substitute. And as I mentioned earlier, TVP comes in different forms. Crumbled TVP is a good substitute for ground meat in dishes like spaghetti, chili, and tacos. Chunks and curls work well with pasta and rice and in salads. And plant-based meat can be used in place of its equivalent meat. Gardine's fishless fillets can be eaten instead of fish. Plant-based chicken can be used instead of chicken, and so on and so forth. So let's walk through a few examples and how you would veganize them using our questions. So let's say you have spaghetti with meat sauce and cheese. We know that the animal products in this dish are ground beef and cheese. We absolutely need to replace the ground beef because it's kind of making it hearty. And you can replace the ground beef with your plant-based meat crumbles, TVP, or even plant-based sausage. I used to love sausage in spaghetti before I was vegan. You can omit the cheese. It's optional again. If you want to buy plant-based cheese and sprinkle on your spaghetti, you can. I think it's kind of expensive to use it as a condiment. I would use it when I absolutely need it. That's just me, though, being cheap. So for our next example, let's say you have a typical meal, meat and 2 to 3 vegetable sides. The animal products, we know you have to substitute the meat. You may have butter that you've cooked the vegetables with, and you would just swap that out with Earth Balance. That's one of the brands of vegan margarine that are on the market. You'd never know that it wasn't traditional butter. So you need to replace the meat, and you can replace the meat with plant-based meat, tofu, tempeh, seitan, or beans. And there wouldn't be anything necessarily to omit for this example. Let's say you have a chicken taco with cheese. So the animal products that you have on this dish are the chicken and the cheese. You definitely need to replace the chicken. You can replace the chicken with lots of things. Plant-based chicken. This is definitely most out. You wouldn't know that it wasn't real chicken in there if you used it in a taco. Tofu, tempeh, seitan, TVP, beans, potatoes. They've made some. I've seen some tacos with like potatoes and cauliflower and stuff. Again, it's all about the sauce and the salsa and cabbage and stuff. And you can omit the cheese. Again, if you want to use just a little bit on the taco, you absolutely could. And guacamole is already vegan. Throw that on there. Salsa, vegan. You're good to go. Let's say you had a tortilla sausage pizza, homemade. I used to make these all the time. They're so good. So obviously your animal products are the sausage and the cheese. You kind of need to replace the sausage and the cheese for pizza. Although you absolutely can order a pizza without cheese. I've done it on numerous occasions. It's perfectly acceptable. They're not even going to look at you weird. Just order the pizza. You can order pizza without cheese. As long as the sauce is really good, it's kind of fine. Sometimes, things don't, they slide off, but as long as the sauce is good, it's still good. But anyway, so you're going to replace the sausage and the cheese with plant-based sausage, TVP, or plant-based shredded cheese. And there was a time when our cheese didn't melt so well, but now it does. So I think Follow Your Heart and Daya, they're probably, and Miyoko's, but I think Miyoko's cheese is a little bit more expensive. But definitely the Follow Your Heart and the Daya, they melt. And you could omit the cheese. Again, that's optional. But this is definitely one of those things that if I was making it at home, I would not ever put as much cheese on the pizza as they do like at a restaurant. Like that would be a complete waste. That cheese is too expensive to put that much on this tortilla pizza. So until the prices come down, use it sparingly. Macaroni and cheese. Now again, this is one of those things where you need your cheese, but there are some other options. So obviously the cheese sauce has cheese and milk in it. You need to replace both in order to make the sauce. You can replace it with plant-based cheese and non-dairy milk, and you may need to just spice it up a little bit. There are also some very creative plant-based cheese sauce recipes. I actually have a few that I like, and there are a ton out there, so many. One of the tricks of the trade is soaking raw cashews or boiling them for like 5 minutes and blending them in with your sauce. It makes anything creamy. It's like science and magic. what soaked cashews do to create a creamy sauce. I'll make sure I include a couple recipes in your it doesn't taste like cheese, but it's a really good sauce. But again, you could use store-bought cheese and melt it with some milk and some Earth Balance and add some seasonings. So you have options, and there's nothing to omit in this example. And then I think this is our last example. Say you have a turkey sandwich with mayonnaise and cheese. Your animal products are the turkey, the mayonnaise, and the cheese. Kind of a lot. You're going to definitely want to replace the turkey. Mayonnaise is really actually optional, but we have vegan mayo. So I put this in the wrong order. So you could omit the cheese. You could use plant-based cheese. So to replace this, you could use plant-based deli meat. I think tofu or tempeh or seitan would be better than the plant-based deli meat. You could also make a veggie sandwich. Like when I wrote this up, I was like, this sandwich would be so good. I need somebody to sell this so I can buy it. So spring greens, marinated portobello mushrooms, shredded carrots, pickled red onions, cucumber. Like that would be a really good veggie sandwich with like a balsamic glaze and some hummus or something. Like you could make a really, really good veggie sandwich that's really more appetizing than this turkey and cheese sandwich. For many reasons, cheese is a sticking point for many people considering a plant-based diet. The store-bought cheese, it melts, it works. It's just a little bit more expensive, so you're not going to want to, use as much. But if you're using it as a condiment, consider not replacing it in the recipe. You'll be surprised that over time you won't miss it. It's not essential in most dishes. And you'll also be saving yourself a lot of unnecessary calories because remember, just because it's plant-based doesn't mean it's calorie-free. That's a very important point. So plant foods are naturally lower in calories than meat. So if you substitute vegetables for meat, you're going to end up with a lower calorie meal. That may be fine. But what you may not realize is how much lower in calories it is. So you may need to incorporate beans and vegetables with more starch along with a small amount of whole grains to make sure that you're not hungry later. Eating more fiber is going to fill you up. Foods with water, they're going to fill you up. But yeah, whole grains, starchier vegetables, beans, they have a few more calories. So make sure you include those in your meal and you should have no problem staying full. If you're using plant-based meats, they're typically higher in calories, and you're not going to necessarily need to make those additions. But if you are kind of doing more whole food plant-based, you're going to want to make sure you incorporate some of those higher calorie foods so that you're not hungry, because you'll be surprised. Vegetables don't have that many calories, and you will be hungry. And being hungry is unnecessary. Don't ever do that. So don't go down the rabbit hole of looking for vegan or vegetarian recipes until you have mastered veganizing the foods that you typically eat. Your go-to family favorites that you kind of incorporate every couple of weeks. Keep it simple and familiar, and you're going to be less frustrated and more satisfied. And you're also going to spend a lot less time preparing your meals. So I don't want you to overcomplicate this. I mentioned this before. I don't want you to get overwhelmed and give up. Keep it simple and only look for recipes as you need them. Don't make, your first step looking for recipes. You can prepare so many meals without a recipe, the stuff that you fix on a weekly basis. I want you to become a pro at veganizing the meals you typically eat. Keep your meals familiar, and it's going to be so much easier for you. Again, master the basics first. Once you master tofu and tempeh, you can incorporate those and you'll learn to enjoy them because it's all about how you prepare them. Give yourself and these foods a chance. You're going to need to experiment, make adjustments. You may buy one brand of plant-based beef crumbles and you don't like it so much, try another brand. Don't give up on it altogether. The textures of these foods are going to be new to you. You may not cook all the vegetables and the tofu perfectly the first time. Give yourself some time to figure it out. Just like any food, how good it tastes depends on how well you prepare it. Don't blame the food until you've taken the time to learn how to cook it well. And also your taste buds are probably going to adjust over time. So give yourself some time. Kind of consider this an experiment. And it really is. We're just trying it out, incorporating a little bit each week. We're not, I'm not throwing you to the wolves. You're not going to dive in and have to eat all vegan meals all week. We're going to be collecting that data in your journal about the meals that you already eat. And that's going to be where you're going to go to come up with the vegan meals for the next week. We're going to be veganizing. So manage your expectations. Remain open-minded. And we're going to review, and then I'm going to wrap it up. So in order to easily eat more vegan meals, you first have to be clear about what vegan means. It doesn't matter how much fat, calories, or sugar is in the food. As long as it doesn't contain animal products, it is vegan. You need to be familiar with all of your options and all of the ways that you can substitute animal products in your meals. There are a lot of ways. You need to know where to find them in the store. It's tricky. It's not obvious. And finally, you need to replace or omit the animal products in the meals you typically eat. In the majority of cases, you do not need a special vegan recipe. Look at the meals that you've written in your journal and ask yourself, what animal products are in this meal? Which of them are essential and need to be replaced? What are your options for replacing them? And which of the animal products can be omitted?